If you traveled back 468 million years ago, then you would face a terrifying giant beast. This tentacled monster is called Camarasaurus, the ancestor of today's octopuses and squids that personally established the great dynasty of cephalopods. Just looking at pictures, you might not appreciate how enormous it was. At this moment, please take out your measuring tape at home and extend it to 8 meters. This will give you a more intuitive sense of its size. The trilobites during this period remained as prosperous as ever, with their armor having evolved to become even more perfect. Yet they still occupied the very bottom of the food chain. If the earlier Anomalocaris could be considered a strength-based hunter, then these Camarasaurs were all-around warriors. They evolved unique hunting methods that allowed them to easily capture prey, even when they couldn't see it. They possessed countless tentacles, each more flexible than our fingers. This trilobite could only try its best to stay away from these deadly tentacles. In theory, as long as it maintained a safe distance, the trilobite would be safe. But Camarasaurs were so intelligent that they simply needed to approach from a different direction to easily catch hiding trilobites. Moreover, these giant predators had scissor-like mouths capable of cutting through even the hardest armor. Thus, the oceans of this era were firmly under their control. However, an extremely important new life form also appeared during this time. They always wore an expression of surprise on their faces. This was Arundaspis. As one of the early fish species, not having yet evolved jaws made Arundaspis look somewhat comical. In daily life, they could only barely survive by sucking up food debris, but none of this was truly important. What mattered was that these earliest fish possessed the world's first spinal columns, making them extremely agile and fast swimmers. As the first vertebrates, they would eventually give rise to amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and birds. Of course, the oceans at this time weren't solely ruled by Camarasaurs. Those giant arthropods also began appearing. In simpler terms, these were enormous sea scorpions. Pterygotus was the giant among them. While their 2-meter body length wasn't as exaggerated as Camarasaurs, their sturdy armor combined with a pair of massive, powerful claws and their inherently murderous nature made them frequently dare to challenge Camarasaurs. When time advanced to 460 million years ago, land plants also began evolving. They successfully developed lignin, which meant plants could grow thicker and taller. To compete for sunlight, they engaged in fierce competition. A spectacular explosion of plant life had officially arrived. However, everything has its cycles of prosperity and decline. Just as all living things were flourishing, the first mass extinction event in biological history occurred. By 445 million years ago, Earth's atmospheric carbon dioxide levels suddenly dropped by 60%. Without the protection of greenhouse gases, temperatures entered extreme conditions, bringing terrifying consequences. First, shallow sea areas began freezing over. For creatures living in warm waters, this was catastrophic. As the ocean started freezing, countless lives perished. Beneath the beautiful, enchanting ice crystal patterns lay the graves of innumerable creatures. The land was even worse. Everywhere was blanketed in white, with over half the planet's surface flash frozen. This period lasted approximately 200,000 years, directly causing the death of 85% of all life. The shallow seas were clearly uninhabitable now. Some intelligent and highly adaptable creatures had already begun migrating to deep-sea regions, like those ancient nautiluses that have survived from hundreds of millions of years ago until today, even becoming first-class protected animals in some countries. They can truly be called living fossils. Meanwhile, those cephalopods evolved into various forms, their gelatinous bodies making them unafraid of deep-sea pressure. The spark of life was thus preserved. All nightmares eventually end. After 200,000 years of deep freeze, global temperatures gradually began rising again. An extraordinarily magnificent great thaw was announced. After persisting for several thousand years, nearly all the ice disappeared. Earth returned to its azure blue appearance, meaning shallow seas once again became habitable environments. The cephalopods were the first to return to shallow waters. Then time advanced to 374 million years ago, 70 million years after the Great Thaw, when Earth officially entered the Devonian period. Surprisingly, the cephalopods failed to maintain their territory. Instead, those once insignificant vertebrates finally began flourishing and growing stronger. Do you know what it's called?